Okay, everybody, welcome back. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about stretching the dough and then getting it formed up to put on your tray so then you can top it and bake it. If you're baking in an oven, you typically wanna do it in 2 stages. So first, what we're gonna do is we're gonna stretch the dough, we're gonna put it on the parchment, and then we're gonna add our pizza sauce, and we're going to par bake it in the oven. What that's going to do is going to allow you to not have a very wet crust. It'll make it nice and crunchy and chewy, exactly what you're gonna want in your pizza. Also, if you put the cheese on too early, your cheese will potentially end up burning up or being way too overdone before the pizza is actually done. So you'll think that your pizza is done, but it's actually not all the way done, and you come up with a crust that's gonna be soggy and not really as pleasing to eat. So we're gonna first take out a dough ball, and so that's where our semolina comes in. And so what we're going to do is we're gonna kind of set up our counter space so we have space to work with all of this. We're going to take our semolina out of the package, which, let me grab some scissors for that. Simply just cut it open and dump it out on the counter for yourself, because you're gonna be using this when you're stretching your dough. Get all of it out, and now you wanna take a little bit of it and you're going to dust it on the pizza dough itself and kind of all around it. And you're gonna take a little bit, put it on your spatula, and that's gonna help you separate these dough balls. And then underneath it, you can just simply make sure that everything is separated pretty good. If they're stuck together, that way when you pull it apart, it won't come together. But now you can just simply take this and pull your dough off. Now, if you notice, it's starting to just pull away, and that's what the parchment does. It helps you kind of have the dough in a structure where it's pretty easy to work with. That's why using parchment will help you out, but simply just lay that on there nice and gentle. With the rest of this dough, we're gonna go ahead and cover it back up. We don't want it drying out on us on the counter, so cover it back up with a little bit of aluminum foil. That way you're ready to work with it later. And we're gonna take this dough and then we're gonna shape it. With the dough, you can decide if you wanna do a circle, you can do a square. Realistically, the shape of your pizza is not going to make it more flavorful. It's gonna make it a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Typically, when I have a sheet pan that's like this, I wanna use it kind of as much of the surface area as possible. So I wanna make a rectangle pizza, which, you know, turns out to be a nice pizza as well. So you're gonna take this, and what you wanna do is generously coat it in the semolina, and I wanna stretch it over the semolina and kind of get all the air inside of the dough out to the outside. Once you have that, take it, flip it over, same thing on the other side, okay? Now, there's several different ways of stretching your dough. One that I find pretty easy is the old take and drop technique, which is basically just using the weight of the dough to stretch it out. You'll notice it's harder to stretch as it's colder. So the more that you let it rest on the counter, it's gonna be easier for you to stretch as you continue to come along. The goal you wanna do is you wanna make sure that you kind of keep it even. If you start seeing areas where you've got it a little bit too thin, you wanna try and make sure that you're very gentle and careful with those areas. Otherwise, you're gonna create a hole. The reason why we're using parchment is it's kind of a cheater move, which if you get a hole in your pizza and you put it on a pizza stone or you put it in your pizza oven, it becomes a big mess and it becomes a big problem. Now, this is pretty much the easiest way to stretch. If you notice, I'm just simply letting the weight carry it, and I'm lightly pulling away until I get mostly a shape that I want. Another thing that you can do is you can kind of take it and with your hands, stretch it. But you'll notice, you see how it's very good and structured. It's really kind of holding on to itself, but you don't want to over pull and create yourself holes. What I like to do is typically create something like this. Once we have something that's like that, we're gonna move all of this semolina out of the way because we're gonna use this for the rest of our pizzas. Now we can simply take this dough and put it right here and take a piece of parchment. And this is kind of our insurance policy. This is gonna allow us to make the pizza without having that much of an issue with transferring it. Now, once you have it on the parchment, you can stretch it out some more and kind of get it to roughly the shape that you want. So like I said, I kind of want it in this square shape, so I'm going to put it on here like that. First thing you're going to do is simply put a little bit of sauce on it. Make sure that you're putting sauce a little bit all over the pizza. The reason why is because if you don't, it's gonna puff up in the middle if it doesn't have any weight. So it needs this sauce when it's doing that first cook to have the weight. Now, for example, if you're doing maybe like a white pizza or something like that, you can use your white sauce and put that on there. But the goal is you want to get it as close to the edges as possible, so that way when you're building a crust, only the edges are creating your crust. We got enough sauce on there, okay? The next thing that I want to add is I want to add some Pecorino Romano. You can get it shredded if you want, or you can go with just getting a simple hand shredder and just kind of shred it over the pizza. Now remember, when you're shredding your own cheese, you're actually using fresh ingredients and not store-bought ingredients where they're already pre-shredded and things like that. The quality of your pizza is going to come out much better than what you intended before. Got a little bit of that on there. We're going to put a little bit of olive oil, which is just going to help it cook. Once again, if you decided you wanted to use your pizza stone, you'd have your pizza stone in the oven. You'd already have it hot. Now you're not going to take it out of the oven, but what this parchment paper allows you to do is easily lift and transfer this. So for example, if I had it in the oven right now, I could simply come over to the oven and pull out and place my pizza right onto the stove. But you don't have to do that. So I'm going to let this heat back up for a second. And what we're going to do is simply we're going to put it on our sheet pan, okay? And that's going to create the ease of pulling it in and out of the oven. So now, once this is heated back up, make sure that it's at the right temperature. Now I can go ahead and put this in the oven. Now the goal for this cook is simple. We're going to actually cook it just to the point where the dough is properly cooked and everything like that, and maybe a few minutes before it's fully cooked. This process doesn't take really long, but it's something that you want to watch. What you don't want to do is necessarily set a timer. This isn't kind of a set it and forget it process. You really need to make sure you watch the pizza, and you'll see the crust will start to brown a little bit. If it's not fully brown, don't wait too much longer, but you'll see it puff up and you'll see kind of building a crust and everything for you. You'll see that your sauce bubbles and starts to dry out a little bit, and then that's when you know that you're going to be able to take it back out of the oven, and we're going to look at this thing as we get done with that part. So now I'm going to put this in the oven and we're going to watch it, and it's going to grow for us. Okay guys, about 5 minutes has passed by. Once again, this is different for each and every single oven. Your oven may be different than my oven, which is why it's something that you want to watch. But the goal is if you want to look at it, you see how the crust here is getting a little bit bubbly. It's starting to come together on the bottom. This could probably go for another couple of minutes on the bottom because it's not really done all the way. But if you notice, it is together, and you see how it's still a little bit wet. Just want to give you that there so you can kind of see the sauce is still a little bit wet. You really want to get it a little bit more dried out. So we're going to put this back in for a couple of more minutes. Okay guys, roughly about 10 minutes or so has passed by, but once again in this process, that's why you kind of want to watch it in your oven just to see how it comes out, because each oven is going to have different timings. Some might cook this faster, some might cook this a little bit slower. But as you can see here, we're getting a little bit of color. It's starting to get a little bit crispier on the crust, which is what we want. Our sauced area has kind of dried up a little bit. And so now it's time to add some cheese to it. What we can do too, because if you notice, you see how movable this pizza is, we can just transfer it now directly to the pan. So you no longer need the parchment anymore. You can throw that out of the way. You can just do the rest of this directly on the pan. That's gonna help you crisp up a little bit more because the pan's heat. But once again, Much better to do this on a stone, and you can pull it away on the stone as well and kind of have everything together there. So now we're gonna make this one super simple, add a little bit more basil to it to make it more traditional, and we're gonna add some fresh mozzarella to it. And this is just a traditional Neapolitan style pizza, but this is where you get to be the inventor and you can really create whatever you want on your pizza. But the goal is to just make something nice for yourself and for your family. But you know, if you like pepperoni, make a pepperoni pizza. Whatever you want to put on this pizza, this is your pizza now. Another thing that you can do, which is going to help you develop a little bit more flavor on the crust, if you have olive oil at home and maybe a brush like this. If you don't have a brush like this, you can kind of use your finger and go around. But if you have a brush like this, you can take a little bit of olive oil and kind of brush it onto the crust. And what that's gonna do is gonna help it kind of develop a little bit more color, and then also it's gonna help it crisp up and get a little bit crunchy for you. So then, you know, if you decide you like a crunchier crust, this is a good step to do. If you don't like a crunchier crust, obviously you can leave this out. It's really up to you. Last thing we wanna add to this is a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Once again, if you got already pre-grated, that's fine. But if you have some grated yourself, that's even better. So now that we have all of this together, we're simply gonna put this back in the oven and we're gonna let the cheese melt and kind of let everything get nice, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so now we're back. The pizza is cooked. The cheese is starting to bubble. That's what you want to see in the oven. And that means that the pizza is going to be ready to go. If you notice this pizza, I'm just going to transfer it to the plate here. You see how it's nice and crunchy on the bottom? So pulling that parchment away really helps you to kind of get that crispiness that you want on the crust. And so now, you know, it's just ready for us to actually take. If you notice, you see how we've got some nice browning, we got nice crunchiness. You see that crack right there, but it's still soft on the inside. That's what you want. You want it to be crunchy, but yet soft on the inside. If you're using a pizza stone or you're using a pizza oven, this is gonna puff up a lot more for you. Even though on a baking sheet, it didn't puff up as much, but because of that heat transferring up, is what's going to help create the air bubbles that you see. So I recommend buying some type of pizza stone or pizza steel, you know, or baking steel, baking stone. All of them are the same thing. It does not matter. It's going to help you if you're doing this more and more often and getting that kind of consistency that you want, which is a crust that has risen a lot more. However, I'm sure the aroma that's coming from your kitchen right now is going to be amazing. Now, to finish this off, simply we're just going to add a little bit more olive oil. A lot of people, they'll add black pepper to it. Hold on, I'm gonna grab that real quick. Just some fresh ground black pepper and a little bit more Parmesan. And that's it. And that's the magic right there. That's making a pizza. So let's go ahead and cut this up. I typically, when I do the square pizza like this, is I just wanna cut it into slices that are even. Now, if you don't have a rolling pizza cutter, you could just use kitchen scissors. You don't need a pizza cutter. You can simply take a pair of scissors like this and just simply cut down the middle of your pizza. In fact, in Italy, that's what they do. They don't have the rollers in most places. They just have a pair of scissors and they're cutting the pizza like this. Let's look at that. I mean, look, cheese pulling away. If you notice, you see you still have the bubbles and structure inside of there. Look at that flop, it's nice. You got the crust not so dark on the bottom, but yet it's still something that is got structure and not flopping all over the place on you. You know, that's kind of what you want in making a pizza. But even, you still have coloring around the bottom and the sides. It's all good. And now it's time to take a bite. Exactly how I make it every time. Lots of flavor. You know, great on the crust. I personally like mine a little bit crispier, but once again, it's all feeling and how you try it out. The best part about making pizza over and over again is you get to explore and try out all new ways. Thank you guys for watching. Really great here. If you have any questions, once again, we have full support. We'll answer any question for you. But thank you again for taking the time and making pizza with me today.